Good morning, everybody, and welcome to, the last bit of the year in terms of we're about to cross the halfway point of the Data Science for Society Seminar Series. I'm Vukosi Maribate. I'm the Chair of Data Science at the University of Pretoria. Hopefully, you can see me on here. And just a little bit of information. The seminar series has been running since 2019, and 2019 it was physical, and it happens. It happens every second half of the year. Obviously, 2020 happened, and the second half of the year meant that we had to change the format. Physically, it was at the University of Pretoria. We went online, and it became more like international in one way or another. And we've kept really to this format. Of having a webinar that is going on. In 2023, we are likely going to move into something that is more hybrid. And through that, it then will allow us to engage with some of the community at the University of Pretoria, but then still keep make it easy for people to join in from everywhere else. After this specific day's the morning's talk, there will be 3 more that are coming along, and it seems we are switching really to natural language processing for the last 3. We will have a speaker from Meta who will be talking about one of their big models that they released, I think the 200 language model. Yes, Manzai? Hello? Okay. I don't know if you're still having a problem, getting the audio. Maybe you might want to connect, disconnect and then connect again. All right. I will just go on just because of time. We try to keep, as I said, in the last 3 speakers, there will be somebody from Meta, one local project that's also looking at some data collection for South African languages. And then we're finalizing the last speaker, but then also will be looking at kind of the intersections of natural language processing and maybe linguistics on that. Today we have Mukondleteri Dumela. Mukondleteri is a software developer with a keen focus on African languages. He began his career at the University of Pretoria, so welcome back, Mukondleteri, in one way or another, studying towards a Bachelor of Information Science in Multimedia, which actually from my office where I am this morning, it's upstairs. Mukondleteri has since then been working on various projects to advance the status of technology for African languages. Today, I think he'll be talking about Angula, and in the past, he's also worked on Xitsonga.org. I think a lot of people who speak Xitsonga likely have his apps on their phones. So with that, I want to hand over to Mukondleteri, and Mukondleteri, you can, I guess, switch on your video and then share your screen, and we can get started.
Sharing my screen. Please confirm if you can see my.
Yes, you can. I don't know if you want to say hello also with your video on.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we're being load shed.
Okay. Good morning.
Oh, no, much better now.
Sanbonani, Lochani, Demachironi, Dumelang. I'm not gonna keep my video on for long. I will switch it on as my bandwidth comes back, but I am currently load shared. Anyway, as introduced, I am Mukondleteri Dumela. In short, I am a founder at Xitsonga.org and also at Angula. I do stutter a bit sometimes when I speak, so do bear with As mentioned, I got my education at UP. I grew up in a village called Minga. That's me there. About 40, 50 years ago. I'm joking, I'm not that old, but that picture represents where I grew up and like essentially. So because of where I grew up, I didn't have exposure to tech at an early age. My first interaction with tech was through a Nokia phone that my brother came back to city. This phone had the Opera Mini browser, and through that browser, I was able to get all sorts of information, and that led me this interest in me to want to understand just how websites work, and that's how I while I was at UP, understand is how this new world, which I'm learning about, how it impacts people that I grew up with and people who raised me and people in my village and people in my community. Struggled making that link. And so I would pick a lot of projects during my varsity days that had to do with bringing projects and tech to everyday people. It's another picture of me. That's a dark guy there. The project that we were working on had to do with Scratch is a program that people can use to get started with programming. It's a program that you use on your computer. And what we were trying to do was move Scratch computer into something physical so that anyone can get started, even people like myself who had no background who had no background with computers. I will talk about the two projects which were mentioned. Was founded at UP. I was line translations for Xitsonga names, and I really struggled. And that began this journey of trying to digitize. The first line of code was written in, I'm not sure if the yellow labs are still there. Very powerful computers. It had Photoshop, Adobe was still a thing back software. And that just opened a new world for me and for other students who had ideas to work on. And so that's how Xitsonga.org. We have enjoyed a bit of success. The Best Educational Solution Award at the MTN App Awards 2020, and that led to the new purchase, Angula. Angula is an app which is meant, I'm going to switch off for a bit. Angula is an app which is meant to teach people African languages. The approach that we took is we partner with language experts and with native speakers to help us generate our content. We currently have just, which are the 9 African languages that are official here in South Africa. The project is currently in beta. If you want to see what the project is about, you can see it on that. In today's presentation, what I would like to focus on is the importance of human language technology for African languages. This is very critical for our society and for the world as a whole. The world is moving very fast. Technology is moving even faster, but many African languages, as you are well aware of, are somewhat left behind. There is a Tsonga proverb which says "Kutlula kamala, swiletela n'wana wa le ndzeni." At the risk of offending linguists and translators who say language proverb into English, I'm going to try in this presentation just to give you a sense of what the proverb is about. So the direct translation of this proverb is the jumping of an impala, baby which is still in the tummy. And the meaning of it is that the young learn from their elders. And the problem that we have with African languages in particular, with the language technology, is there is not a good foundation. The new upcoming, it's very hard for us to catch a good foundation. The general understanding of what a language is quite complex, but I've tried for the purposes of this conversation just to drill it down as a system of communication which is used by a particular community. The language can have dialect. Dialects are understood particular form of that language. Through the years, these languages have groups. This helps us understand them better. Have here in South Africa and the Khoisan group is a bit problematic. It's that we have with trying to define what a language is some languages are more similar, are so similar rather, that it feels like they are dialects. And you have some dialects which are so different that it feels like they are separate. This is what one author has said: a dialect is a language is a dialect with an army. And that really speaks to the complexity of trying to define what a language is. The early publications of languages spoken here in South Africa were initially done by, obviously, the native historians and government. Xitsonga example, which the initial work was done by native speakers and also by missionaries. The missionaries that worked on the Xitsonga language were part of the Swiss mission. An example of some of the work that they did. On your right is a picture of a dictionary from 1902, which was built by a bishop from the Swiss Mission Church. They show that this foundation in terms of publication did somewhat change the tone of the language. For all languages, some other people outside historians and missionaries, but in the main, whichever group worked on them would, in a way, define a certain tone of that language, at least during that particular era. So after this publications, obviously technology is beginning to rise and there are websites popping all over the place, and you find a lot of references of these languages, but you don't really find single websites which are dedicated to single languages. That begins to grow like in later stages. these websites that would have references of blogs. There was a time when people really loved blogging, and you would find a lot of content for African languages. Moved a bit from blogs, it went to websites that people would build and publish information. It would be more comprehensive, have more sources, have these conversations that people would have as well. Wikipedia was also starting to get into the picture. People were using it to publish a lot of information in a more standard way. It allowed for conversations to take place back and forth as well, trying to as people try to navigate the complexities of these languages. From there, we moved to where I believe we are, where we have a lot of mobile apps that somewhat support African languages. There's a lot of content, luckily, on social media as well, and also on. And then we are moving to the human language technologies. But there has been a lot of work in that direction as well. But I don't think we are yet to catch up with other languages like English, French, and others. With human language technologies, of course, I'm well aware that everyone in this call is pretty familiar with all of this. And they have been developed over the years with translations. In the early days, what you would find were people that were doing role-based translations, which obviously have all sorts of problems, but they did provide a service that people could use to translate at that time. Changing with a lot of research that is going into into AI, machine learning, and other areas which are focused on translations. There's also a lot of work that has been done around speech, although we haven't had a massive application of that. There are applications here and there. There was a report by 3 sources, which CSIR, University of Pretoria, and the Northwest University, which is an audit looking at South African languages and how well they are doing. And they developed this in the maturity of these languages as far as human language technologies are concerned. And what they found is, as represented, this was 11 years ago. So a lot has changed, and we'll speak about that. But back then, it looked like this, where you had Afrikaans at the very top, because it was heavily supported by the government, and then English would come second to it, and you would have independent languages last, and Xitsonga was second last. This, as I'm saying, has changed quite a bit in recent years, but we still have more work to do. So what this audit looked at specifically was the data which is available for those languages. It looked also at the software units, language models, etc. It also looked at the apps and end user applications which are available, which are utilizing the data and also the software units and models. And they came up with this index that basically ranked the languages in this way. And in this report, they also said that even though the South African government has said that these human language technologies are a priority for the government, the progress has been slow, and they indicated key areas that should be focused on so that we can speed up. The audit in detail, this is where each of the 9 languages fell. So again, you can see with the independent languages, there's just a bit of support here and there back then, but there wasn't much support for languages like Xitsonga, Tshivenda, isiNdebele, and so forth. There was also back then not much support for speech related technologies. That has changed over the past 10 years. There are projects like the CSIR project for text to speech. There's also Easy for transcriptions. And on the translation front, there are projects like Masakane, which is doing amazing work in building models for African languages. Google also is doing a lot of work around African languages. Meta, I'm quite keen to hear the next presentation because they are also doing amazing work around African languages. But I think the progress could be a lot, should be a lot quicker because the problem we have is that it's quite hard to catch up once a language is left behind because technology is built upon other technology. As the Tsonga proverb says, when the impala jumps, it's the one that educates the baby inside. And if you don't have that foundation, it's really hard to catch up. And so why does all of this matter? One of the biggest questions that is asked, and it's a difficult question, some people shy away from it and dodge it. And the question is, people seem to be moving towards unified languages, where English, in other countries, it might be French, Portuguese, etc. Why should people invest in African languages? Why don't we rather invest in teaching people English so that we have one standard language? And it's a difficult question to answer. And a lot of the answers I give are quite often come from an emotional, because it's something I want to see happen. But when I'm pressed on why don't we rather invest in a unified language as opposed to these many languages that we have? One of the key things that I think speaks to this question and maybe provides a window into why people always give an emotional response to this question is that if you ever see a young man or a young woman in love, one of the first things that they do, if they don't speak the same language, even though they have English, which they can use as a common language, they try to learn the language of the other person. Maybe not be that fluent in the language, but they would learn a few greetings here and there. And I think it's because there is just like a deep sense of identity that comes with language. We understand that language helps us connect with people. It shows that we embrace the person that is next to us. We embrace their culture. We embrace their heritage. We embrace their traditions. We embrace their customs. And that speaks to language as more than just a tool of communication. Language is also a tool for art. It's also a tool for, showing affection. It's also a tool for entertainment. And there are many areas of society which are outside just communication that are embedded in language. And people argue that, language is culture. And I think that's really true. Who a person is, their identity, where they come from, and the kind of world that they might be imagining they want to live in. There was a scary story here in South Africa of a language. It's part of the San group of languages, where there was only one speaker left who could speak that language. And the fear that people expressed was when a language dies, it goes away with its traditions, its oral traditions. It goes with its customs. It goes with its knowledge, which is yet to be explored.
Hi, I'm Mukondleteri.
Sorry, I apologize. My power came back, so
Okay.
my room started.
All right, thanks. Good to have you back. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was still talking about the more than just a tool. And the heritage of human language. Different societies. Africa. It also opens opportunities for this new world that we live in. When I was given an example of a joke I always make with my friends. The joke is, if you had to build say for Xitsonga, would it understand? Like, how should it be? Should it only speak Xitsonga? Should it speak Xitsonga and mix it with English words? And I would go on and say, if it only spoke Xitsonga, would the everyday Tsonga person living in South Africa, in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, and elsewhere be able to communicate with it? And that's a hard question. And the reason it's a hard question, when we are interacting with technology, we are so accustomed to interacting with them through the lens of English, Portuguese, or the lingua francas, which are spoken. What I hope for the future to be is for more support to be available for minority languages. This is not companies that offer businesses languages, because they to start with the biggest languages because they have the biggest reach. The languages such as with one speaker. because there's just one speaker, you don't have a lot of time to actually invest in efforts that will preserve the language for future generations. I believe that in the future, there is going to be at least a balance to still support the big but as well small languages which have little to no support. I don't think to slow down the development of Zulu or Sesotho or any other language. Some of the languages that have less time of research, which is going on, which is continue, and we're going to see more of that in the future. Looking at various problems, South Africa and other countries in Africa will be setting global trends in technology instead of just adopting these trends, which are already happening for African languages.
It seems people are like having problems with the audio. It keeps on dropping. I don't know if there's something on your side that changed in terms of the internet connection.
Okay, I'll double check that now.
Okay.
Okay, it should be better now.
Okay, all right, you go ahead.
I believe we will be setting those global trends. So, of course, be adopting any trends that are coming from the outside. If there is going to be more investment, more collaborations within the space, various people, I mean, different people from different industries are starting to collaborate. I have been collaborating and starting to collaborate more. And I believe this is going to also increase in the future. I will end the my presentation here, but what I would end it with is another Xitsonga proverb, which says, Ravi le rintshwa ri tiya hi le ra khale. And this is to say the new branches draw their strength from the old branches. And I believe if we continue building these foundations in different areas of we will be able to catch up and also set a global trends in terms of these technologies that are being. I will end it there, and we can go to Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Mukondleteri, on the presentation. I think also for me personally, it provided a lot of sorry, a lot of good, like, background also on why, like, what the last, especially maybe 2 decades of progress within either the HLT or NLP areas have been from especially the public perspective, right? Not necessarily the researchers within there. I'll kick off first, and for people, you can unmute yourself. I mean, you can raise your hand and then I'll acknowledge you, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. But there was a question earlier in the chat, I think by Martha, asking where does the name Angula come from? Angula, yeah.
Oh, yes. I always get into trouble with developers because of Angular, but Angula means to reply or to have a say in the Xitsonga language.
Okay. that's on there. Are there any other questions? You can either put your question in the chat and then I'll read it out. Or as I said, like I guess iPhone, which is yeah, you can go ahead.
Hello, this is Manzai.
Okay.
I'm professor of physics here, and I connect very well with what yeah, I'll learn to do it. The question that I have for you is that in connection with many different languages in Africa, have you also find a connection between isiTsonga and what they call Tonga in Zambia?
Yes, so I have looked into that. The languages sound very different, the way that they are spoken. So I have not found a specific connection, but historians say that about 1,000 years ago, Xitsonga and Tonga sounded very similar. That's the connection. But in today's world, they are very different.
Oh, okay. Let me just give this comment. Thank you. Of course, can you allow me, please?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I go to Zambia a lot and I interacted with them a lot. And according to me, Tonga is not really Tonga. I think it's Tonga that has been diluted by the infiltration of colonialists, the way they will say our languages. Because I find very similar terminology as compared to isiTsonga here at home. When I'm sitting with them and then I ask them to speak some things in their languages. Thank you very much. This is interesting and we'll continually follow.
Okay, thanks for that, Matimba, do you want to maybe ask via audio if you can?
Okay. Sorry, hi, Mukondleteri. So my question really, I think I've typed it on the chat, but it was just to see, like, in terms of the work that you've been doing, what are some of the challenges that you have been facing? And in terms of response, like from people in Guyana, for instance, are they aware of some of the things you're working on? And in terms of their interactions, what kind of support are you getting, like, from there as well? And in terms of the technology, like looking at how not so many people are connected to technology at home, like what are some of the things you really wish to see from that side to sort of like help and sort of like enable more developments for Xitsonga?
Oh, yes. No, yeah, so the biggest challenges connect the two worlds of, linguistics and software. Language, there's a lot of politics around language that is also, quite hard to navigate and understand what the right way of in terms of outreach, a lot of people are based is South African people, and also people that are in Guyana, Malamulele, and other. Since the App of the Year award, I've been able to have an opportunity to chat on a lot of community radios locally, and that has helped us to reach more people. To ensure the development of, or at least that the development continues, was one of the things, especially back then, I think things have changed now, was because where the technology was, it was just a bunch of words online, and it's a very boring thing for a software, it's a very boring thing for a software engineer to work on. But what we try to do is come up with really exciting projects that grab people's attention. So one of the tools that we build, which people love, in everywhere we go, this is the one feature that people love and they talk about, which is the the ability for them to translate from WhatsApp. They can also send us images, and we can send them a transcription of like what's in the image. So we try to have exciting projects like that so that we grab people's attention and show people that it is possible to have exciting projects, to build exciting tools with these languages. Yeah, I hope I didn't leave out any question you asked.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that, Mukondleteri. A question comes from Dina here. She's asking, is there a particular reason for using female cover images on the app? Almost all the photos are women in the languages in the app. Yeah.
No, there is no particular reason. Maybe it speaks to what I should have added to the. It's like funding issues. So pictures come from people I know. I would normally post on my WhatsApp that I need pictures. So people will send pictures through, and yeah, that just happens to be female pictures. But yeah, there's no specific reason for it.
Okay. Okay. Manzai, are you asking a question again? Okay, we'll assume that's an old hand. Yes, Friedmore.
Thanks a lot, Mukondleteri. Hope I pronounced it well. Mine is just an appreciation to say thanks for what you are doing. Apparently, my father can be traced to the Tonga people. You know, of course, we moved to Zim during the war, and stuff. So I'm quite excited to reconnect with my traditions, and I guess I'll be visiting your project frequently to learn. Yeah, thanks a lot, and I hope also maybe to collaborate in the future.
Okay, I guess that's
Thank you so much for that compliment.
Okay, I'll ask a question in here. I think you talked about, for example, like the rise of things like Wikipedia coming into the space and people creating content on there. Maybe can you give a bit of thought on alternative ways that people are creating content for Xitsonga, for one part, but then also maybe for South African languages, and how you see that, like, you know, what, like, you know, things like example, Facebook, people using Twitter to create this, how could that actually be leveraged in this space in a collaborative way for people to work towards preservation and also teaching?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for the question. Yeah, there's so much content these days, and I think with each day there's like there seems to be a new way or a new format like of creating content. I think social media is one powerful way, and which one exposes the dialects that people may have not been exposed to before, because people tend to write in the manner that they speak on a day-to-day. So I think that does provide researchers with a wealth of information, with more than just the standardized language which you normally find when you interact with like with official documents and things like that. So I think that's one area which will be very helpful to researchers. Yeah, I think maybe that's yeah, that's my entire answer. So
okay, no, thanks. Are there any other questions? Oh, Martha, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for a lovely talk. I just wondered about the translation app and the accuracy. So I'm thinking in African languages, there's people use words in different contexts, and I guess the dialect also added some level of complexity. How do you ensure that the translation is accurate when you're actually translating for, say, for Xitsonga stuff in languages like that? Does the question make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Thanks for the question. Yeah, so we have two set of translations on the platform. So there is translations for content that we manage. The content is designed for a specific purpose. So we would have the context in mind when we do the translation, and would also make it obvious using labels what we are using the word in. And then there are translations that, there are things people can translate. In the beginning, we were system to do the translation. To miss context a lot. We've since will translate when they
Oh, I lost audio.
Yeah, okay.
rather like with context, but we do.
Mukondleteri, I think your audio cut. Can you maybe stop sharing your screen and then just keep to the, yeah. And then, yeah,
Okay.
can you start that answer again? Unfortunately, I think you cut off, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying we have two set of translations. So there is the translations that we control, which is for content that we created ourselves. We do use labels on the content to help people understand the context for the translations. And then the second type of translations that we have on the platform are things that people translate themselves. For that, initially, we were using a rule-based translation, which if you used it correctly, you could get some good results. But it was way off if you don't follow rules of grammar and things like that. But as soon as Google released, added new languages early this year, which included Xitsonga, we switched our APIs to use Google. With Google, way better. There are still a few context here and there, but we do provide guides on the website on how people can, like the keywords that people can use so that they get better translations. Yep.
Thank you very much. Interesting work.
Yeah, Choice?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Prof.
Yeah, can hear you.
Should I say my question is multi-pronged or two-pronged? I hope you make sense of what I want to say, I want to ask. From where I stand, African languages, or indigenous, should I say, African languages, are at some kind of a crossroads in South Africa in terms of them developing and becoming languages of education at advanced levels. We have quite a number of institutions that are going that route. And there is still this issue of most of them lacking enough vocabulary or development to be used at that level. And we have a challenge of everybody and anybody saying they can translate, and then you get some of the information or some of the knowledge mistranslated. How do you handle it, or how do you deal with such? And then how do you ensure that the people you collaborate with are really translating to the standard that is acceptable, or that is doing two things, maintaining and developing the language at the same time?
Okay, thanks for the question. Yes, that is one of the biggest issues when dealing with African languages, even outside teaching or just publishing information about the language. It's really hard to get people who can do translations in the most accurate, like in a like in a very high accurate standard. And that is something that we deal with every day. And it's a difficult issue, and we don't take it lightly. So our as many people involved, but so that you have various opinions and by these small internal communities before we publish them out to people. A lot of like we've built the systems in such a way that we take in a lot of feedback from users, and to that feedback and that way keeps improving. Of mistranslations that have can distort even the very traditions and customs that are trying to preserve. Yeah, that is my answer.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mukondleteri. Maybe, Choice, there's a second question on there.
No, it's not. The hand doesn't want to go down. I'm trying to take it down.
Manzai?
Colleagues, this is very interesting work that we are doing. As we look at what Choice was asking, I think this platform and the work that you are doing, Professor Marivate, and all your students and colleagues there, is to introduce decolonization in a special way using technology. And therefore, when it comes to translations, my view is that we should be able to send information to the platform on different ways. I'll give you an example here of the physics work that we do, is that we don't expect new word on this particular word. It's called mata, or in other languages, we call mandla. We don't expect new words, we just expect ourselves to use the very words that are being used in other languages, like force, like momentum, like power, like energy, in the space of math. I will just use it that way. So if we all contribute towards these translations, I think we are going to win a big project with you, Mukondleteri. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, no, thanks for the key to get industry experts and people that do translations to somewhat have a conversation, especially about things that are sort of new concepts, and try see which original African words are appropriate to use there. There are a number of organizations that are already they are doing this, but also trying to, just come up with new words to explain the new tech that the languages are facing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mukondleteri. And I think maybe to give like a larger context in here as we're finishing off for everyone is that like, the reason we do this and we have these information sharing sessions also early in the morning so that you have the rest of your day is to also highlight that there's a lot of people who are doing work, and then how do we make connections in between. So to Manzai's point on there, it would be very interesting if on one side, even if somebody started and say like, okay, for physics, here's one a local South African language. We create a kind of a lexicography with translations, and we get some people together. Maybe you connect to the Pansalb and that gets created. That becomes, in the machine learning space, a data point that then can be used to also figure out maybe how then do we translate, if let's say we start in Setswana, how do we actually do it in isiXhosa? How do we do all that can actually be a man or a human machine a task that then can actually end up building a lot. And we're very interested, I think, for a lot of people, in very specific use cases. So whether in health, whether in something like physics, if that can be created, it becomes very interesting because it also makes it that whole process, if it gets recorded and how it was done, other people can then take it on. And there's also more and more resources for people to actually try out things like that in terms of putting out a project budget, applying for it maybe to people like Sadila here in South Africa, and then paying either linguists and people to then create that data. So I think, please, if you are thinking of something, reach out and then let's connect you to the right people, and then let's see. Because on the other side, through projects like Masakane, we have like hundreds to thousands of researchers who are just waiting to help out when the data becomes available, to see how far we can actually push some of these automated systems. And we're very happy when they end up in places like, Mukondleteri talking about the Google update API when they put in Xitsonga. We all looked at that, and we know some of the team members who are working on that project, and some of the techniques they use to be able to actually transfer from other languages without having a lot of Xitsonga data, but then being able to actually get to a point where you see much better Xitsonga translation, improvement in in Setswana and Sepedi, those types of things. I think on that, thanks everybody for coming through. I don't like being kind of going like later than the normal. The video will be up probably early next week. You can share with other people. Do let people know about the seminar series. As I said, like the next 3 talks are going to be very interesting, because also, yes, we're going to have Meta or Facebook's team, somebody from there who worked on their big model, which I don't think yet is part of, I don't know if it's part of their translation system yet, but then going through the challenge, the things that had to happen for them to get data, to bring in people, think about the societal impact that some of the data actually brings up in that way. Enjoy your Friday. For those in South Africa, try to survive the load shedding as good as you can, and we'll see you at the next seminar. Thank you, everyone.